So as the NFL offseason is on their way, I want to talk about, of course, my favorite team, the Buffalo Bills, and what's going to happen this offseason. Definitely a lot tougher than last year, especially in the free agency. Who's going to be leaving the Bills? The two last year, if you can recall, was Tremaine Edmonds and Jordan Poyer, and I made a video last year about that, and kind of break it down my thoughts on what was going to happen. And to be honest, I said that both of them were going to leave. Of course, we saw Jordan Poyer came back. Edmonds did eventually lead to the Chicago Bears, but for this one in a much different spot. Not high calibers like Tremaine Edmonds, but a decent players that had good seasons, and especially too with the cap and everything going on. And no, I just wanted to quickly show you just the articles coming out. Not gonna click on them, but just give you the gist about concerns about Von Miller, what's going to happen with him. There's a chance that post June 1st, if they do trade him, that the dead cap will drop to $17 million. The Bills will only save $7 million in cap space if that does happen. Very unlikely a team would trade for that contract, but if that does happen, they would save $7 million post June 1st. The other one being notable, probably the biggest name overall, is just Gabe Davis. It's likely he posted something on social media. It looks like that he's going to leave because, once again, just the demand of the market, potentially what he can get paid, and also the Bills not being able to have the money to accommodate him. So now we're gonna go to a spreadsheet that kind of is all over the place, but just wanted to break it down. And of course, we're gonna be going left to right, but at times I'm gonna be jumping around to kind of explain some stuff. So notable free agents that the Bills could potentially be losing for the team is on the left-hand side. You have Micah Hyde, Daquan Jones, Gabe Davis, Leonard Floyd, Tim Settle, Jordan Phillips, AJ Espinosa, Dane Jackson, Ty Johnson, Tyler Dotson, Tyler Rapp, Damian Harris, Linval Joseph, Puna Ford, Shaq Lawson, Trent Sherfield, Tyler Mikovich, Kyle Allen, and Quinn Morris. I think there's one or two players I'm missing, but not notable players. So as you see, all in the yellow, just quickly break it down. All the yellow is players that are going to be leaving, and there's a whole lot of them. In the orange is players that I could see them bringing back, but it's not a guarantee. And for the green, obviously, is players that I think they can bring back because of just what they're lacking at the position, and also or certain positions, and also just the money wise shouldn't cost too much. So notable ones to start at the top because of the big names. Micah Hyde, I do have retire on that one. It looks, to me, it's most likely that he does retire because of, if kind of people keep up with it, especially for Bills Mafia, is just the neck injuries he's had. Especially going back to last year, he had a stinger that probably ended his season last year. It was week 2, if I have it right, week 2 against the the Tennessee Titans. My bad, against the Tennessee Titans. I'm pretty sure early in the game took a bad hit on the neck and practically was out for the entire season. They come back and did have problems here and there as the season went on. So, and he's a free agent as well. So to me, it just most likely looks like that he's going to retire. I don't see him going anywhere else, getting up there in age, and also just with the injury concern with his neck, I just don't see it's worth it for him to go somewhere else. I do think he's going to retire. Another person that we'll get into later on for the cap situation is Jordan Poyer. Not sure about him, but he's still under contract for at least one more year. Next one is Daquan Jones. He played phenomenal this year. He was definitely, I think, at one point graded as one of, if not the best, interior defensive linemen in the NFL. Again, he was a huge force inside the D-line, but unfortunately, we're going to get to the sad game was for the London game against Jacksonville. We lost Matt Milano and Daquan Jones. Daquan Jones, fortunately enough, was able to come back late in the season, and you did see the impact on him, how well the defensive line played once he came back. But overall, I just don't see the Bills being able to retain him. Quick note on some of the money you see on the right, a lot of them don't have the value that I can see. This is all from Spot Trek, so this is they're projecting what they're worth. I do expect all this money to be a lot higher than what they are listing, but you never know. I do think they'll be a tad bit higher than with Daquan Jones, 6.8. I think he can get a little bit more than that. But this is what projecting what he could get in the free agent market. But at least for $6.8 million, if we're going to keep it with that, I don't know if the Bills can bring him back. Again, I just think there's going to be other teams, especially contenders or playoff teams, that are going to try and just push to throw the money at him for 1 year and try and get good luck out of him, like we were trying to do this year. So I don't see the Bills bringing him back. I did contemplate putting him in the orange where there's a chance, but I think overall, just again the money wise, that's gonna be the theme of this whole video. The money is just too much. The next one, too, even more than that, is I think the biggest name overall is just Gabe Davis. What's going to happen with him? Again, he posted stuff on social media that looks like that he is going to be gone. And for Spot Check, they have their projected annually salary at 13.6. I do think maybe he can get a little bit more depending if he goes to, of course, a worse team with a high cap. But overall, I don't see that the Bills cannot afford him, and nor do I want him to bring him back. And this is not something personal against him. I did like Gabe Davis in the beginning when he, his first 2 years, 2020 and 2021, where he got limited action, but he played phenomenal. And I was pushing, saying that the Bills need to make him the wide receiver too after the 13 seconds game where he had over 200 yards and 4 touchdowns, which, by the way, is the NFL record for most touchdowns in a single postseason game. I thought this guy's gonna ball out. This guy's gonna explode. He has a potential to easily go over 1,000 yards. And unfortunately, stat wise he did do better. But if you watch him on a game by game basis, the last 2 years just is very inconsistent. Not great at catching the ball at times. Even at this point this season, there was many games where he would go through. I wouldn't say many games, probably a little bit overreaction, but there was a decent amount of games where you would look at his stat sheet, he would have 0 catches, 0 targets. Towards the end of the season, he was more used as just a run blocker, and he's phenomenal at that. I'll give him that. That is definitely a great tool to have for a wide receiver. But maybe another team can unlock him and get much more production out of him. But for Gabe Davis, for the money, if you're talking about $13.6 million, that's way too much for a glorified lineman who's can't separate at times, can't make plays on his own like Stephon Diggs, or I would say Khalil Shakir, if that, and also too with Dalton Kincaid. I think those two played much better down the stretch, were much more lethal than Davis. You get a catch or two there, great run blocker, but for the money, we need playmakers outside for Josh Allen, especially the wide receiver too, and that's just too much. I mean, the last 2 years, his best year was in 2022 when he had 48 catches for 836 yards, 7 touchdowns. And this past season, he had 45 catches for 746, 7 touchdowns. Now, one thing I will give you is he's a touchdown machine. He has 27 touchdowns in 4 seasons. To put that in comparison, in that same draft class with Justin Jefferson, he has 30. When we talk about Justin Jefferson being the number 1 wide receiver in the NFL, I'm just talking about the touchdown perspective, he's not that far off from arguably the best wide receiver in the NFL. So 27 touchdowns is a lot, averaging essentially 7 touchdowns a season. He only had 6 in 2021, but he definitely is a great red zone threat, or at times a deep threat. But again, overall for the money, I would rather the Bills pass on this and go in a different direction. Another one too is Leonard Floyd, who definitely had a spectacular year this year for us. For this one, he had over 10 sacks, and he was our team leader in sacks for that one. And I think if I have it correctly too, it's the first Bill in the Sean McDermott era to have double-digit sacks, which is kind of scary to think about. That we're this far in with Sean McDermott, and this is the first person to pass double digits for sacks. But again, played well and didn't have a ton of snap shares, snap counts, or should I say snap percentage. A snap percentage, and played phenomenal in that role. He played great. He was definitely the best pass rusher we had. 10.5 sacks. My bad. 10.5 sacks this season. That's another one for Gabe Davis where the money's too much. $8.1 million. So a team might throw more at him. Again, a playoff team or a championship caliber team that's right on the edge, similar to us. Money wise, once again, it just doesn't make sense for the Bills to bring him back unless he comes back in a really cheap deal. Unfortunately, I think he proved himself this year. He outplayed a contract that maybe we'll be able to afford, and he'll go elsewhere. Tim Settle, for this one, was in the rotation, didn't do anything special, but just because of the big need at the defensive line in general for the Bills, they severely lack with that this year, especially see a decent amount of them being free agents. I think they might just have to bring a couple of these guys back on cheap deals. And I think it definitely is plausible that they can get them on decent, contracts. Another one too, Jordan Phillips. He's been on a team for a few years now, kind of on and off. But I think this time we kind of just move off of him. Did have some penalty problems this season, and again, I just think that it's time for I think the Bills will move off of Jordan Phillips. Next big name is AJ Espinosa, who had a great year this year, 6.5 sacks, and was phenomenal, especially at batting passes down. Had at least interception this year. Was phenomenal. Definitely one of the best defensive linemen we had this season. Again, I just think that and this is also too with having a limited playing count as well, or snap percentage. But once again, similar to what I said for Floyd and Daquan Jones, I think he's just outplayed his contract, and especially with him being still young in the NFL, I think teams are going to throw a lot more money at him than 5.6. I think we just have to go elsewhere. Could this be a spot? Maybe I could talk myself into putting him in orange where he could potentially come back. Yes, but I think overall, once again, I think it's the theme of the video, the money. It's very difficult. And just quickly show you that the Bills are the second worst team in the NFL, only behind the New Orleans Saints at 83 million. We are at 54.2 million, and also too, the cap space did jump up to 250 million. That was also noted yesterday that it jumped up to that, but still 54.2 million, second worst in the NFL. You're gonna be very limited with that, and of course, this is gonna be changed with people restructuring and cuts and stuff like that. But it's still 54.2 million is a ton. So for AJ Espinosa is gonna walk. Dane Jackson. Again, I think he's going to walk. I think the Bills can go in free agency or in the draft. We saw with Christian Benford. Also, too, even before that, Levi Wallace, where they can get good players late in the draft or in free, unrestricted or undrafted free agents. So I think for Dane Jackson, it's not a huge loss. I think he's gonna walk and go elsewhere. Next one too is Ty Johnson. I thought he played phenomenal. This is someone I did not expect. He was a late person coming into the preseason. He signed, I think, a day before or 2 days before the final preseason game, which I thought was crazy because we already had a decent amount of running backs on the roster already. I did not see how he was going to make the roster. It just seemed too little, too late. They decided to stick with him. He was in the practice squad, eventually came up and flourished when Joe Brady took over as the interim OC. And down the stretch, he did not have a lot of plays, but was very explosive. Definitely got a good amount of yardage per run. And was, I think, great at complimenting Dalvin Cook or James Cook. Complimenting James Cook. I think those two are great speed backs. I think he was an amazing running back too. Now this doesn't say the Bills don't go out in free agency and draft or sign a running back like my personal favorite Dante Foreman. I think that'd be a great bell cow for the Bills and just a rotation, or go in the draft and get someone else. But I think Ty Johnson is definitely would be a cheap deal. I don't see a ton of teams throwing a lot of money at him, especially how the running back are perceived for money wise, and also too for the market. I don't think it's very difficult for the Bills to bring him back. Ty Johnson played phenomenal. I think was rated as one of for PFF was graded as one of the top linebackers in the NFL. I think he had over a 90% or a grade for over 90. Played phenomenal. This was someone that really struggled in the preseason, and I was very concerned. This was before Terrell Bernard even played. He was out for the whole preseason, so it was between Dotson and others. So it was a very shaky start. They switched him. They switched the linebacker position that he was playing in the preseason to the regular season, and flourished. He played phenomenal. He stepped up. He played well. This is someone I think that overachieved and outplayed his contract that the Bills could potentially give him. I think the Bills are gonna let him walk with that one. Again, he'll go somewhere else and get a ton of money, wherever that may be. But I think the Bills just can't afford him. Another one is Taylor Rapp. He was brought in last season and played here or there. Stepped in when Micah Hyde was out. I should say out, but also with Poyer as well. He did have to step in when Poyer and Hyde were out at times, and didn't do too bad. For the cap they have for spot check, they have 5.5. I do think the Bills are going to try and bring him back for this season. Kind of played pretty well, and especially again with Micah Hyde being gone, do they try and push him to that position and have Poyer and Rapp as their two safeties? Again, I think they might try and go in free agency, and I do have at least one or two two safeties listed that they potentially go after, or in the draft. I know there's tons of speculation the Bills might try and go with safety in the first round, though there's tons of speculation with anybody. But safety has been brought up with at least the first or second round pick. But I think Rapp is a player they want to bring back, even though he's a little bit higher than other people I said for Espinosa and Dotson, where they're in that similar range. I think that is the money that they're okay with spending with. Damian Harris was for the running back for the Patriots, was out for half the year with an unfortunate season-ending injury. Didn't see him too much. Played good here and there, but overall, it's again another one too that's gonna be gone. Is another person I didn't list was Latavius Murray. I think he'll be gone as well. Damian Harris be gone as well. Just save the money. I think again you can get cheap running backs in free agency or later in the draft. Linval Joseph came in for the Bengals game. He was signed during that week along with Leonard Fournette. This is someone that I could see him bringing back because again, older player, cheap deal, need the depth, need the bodies at the position. So that's someone that I could see them bringing back. Putting forward saying I said for Settle. I think they'll bring him back in a cheap deal. Just once again for saying that way just about Joseph, just a cheap deal. Need a body at the defensive line. Need someone. Shaq Lawson, great at the run, not great pass rusher. I mean, that definitely was a swing and a miss for the Bills when Rex Ryan took him in 2016. Left for a year or two, came back, and so forth. Decent player, but overall, I think it's time the Bills kind of just move off of him. Money wise, I don't think he's gonna be commanding too much, but I think there's someone similar to Jordan Phillips where I think we just need to move on. Appreciate what both those guys done. It's been fun seeing them play here for a few years, but I think unfortunately it's time has changed where they have to move off of them. Next one is Trent Sherfield. For this one, it's hit or miss. Didn't really do anything besides like the week 18 of the Miami Dolphins season. After that, didn't do too much. Had bad drops against the Miami Dolphins, but overall, it definitely is once again just adapted to the wide receiver position. And then for the last three, don't really talk about too much. I think they're going to be on. So we just talked about for the cap hit, negative 54.2. It's definitely going to be tricky to move around. And top cap hits, you see the top five is Josh Allen, of course, at $47 million. Stephon Diggs at 27.8. Von Miller at 23.7. Dawkins at 16.6. And Trey White at 16.4. Definitely have a good amount of cap hits for the Bills. Notable cuts that could potentially happen. Now, this could change. This is as of right now. This could change because of post June 1st, so the numbers might be different. But some top candidates could be obviously Trey White with 16.4. The dead cap with that would be 10.3 with a savings of 6.1 million. Mitch Morse, the center, his cap hit this year is 11.4. Dead cap is 8.4 with a savings of 3 million. May not be worth it because of just a little amount, but if you have to nickel and dime to try and get to under the cap, they may happen. I don't think he'll be cut. He'll most likely restructure, but if they want to go in that direction, that's $3 million in savings. Deontay Hardy, 5.5 this year with a $1.3 million dead cap, saving 4.2. And probably the biggest one is just Naheem Hines, who unfortunately got hurt in a ski jet accident before the season started. His cap hit is 5.4 million. Dead cap is only 500,000 with a savings of 4.9 million. Just those four players alone saves you 18.2 million. And I'm factoring the Von Miller thing too. Again, it's 17 million dead cap. You only get savings of $7 million on the for the cap space. So if that does happen, which is very unlikely because no team's going to trade for him, if you do factor in the Von Miller savings, that jumps up to 25.2 million. But the 18.2 is the more realistic one if they do go that route. Moving over to the draft picks, we do have a ton, kind of different from last year. The third round pick I'm still waiting for because we did trade away for Rasul Douglas before the trade deadline, but we are getting one back because of Trey Edmonds leaving and signing with Chicago. Don't know what round that's going to be. I think it said round 99 when I looked it up, so I don't know if that's already factoring in the Tremaine Edmonds pick or if that was just the original pick we had before we traded it. We have first, second, third, fourth, 2 5th round picks, 3 6th round picks, and 1 7th. So again, a good chunk of draft capital to at least, if you wanted to trade up. There's tons of speculation. Again, do the Bills trade up in the first round to get someone? The last 2 years they did do that with Kaiir Elam and also with Dalton Kincaid. Do they do that again this year to go up and maybe get a wide receiver or a defensive lineman they like, or safety, wherever that may be? I think it's because of the draft capital in the back, the back end, they might trade up or in the middle rounds, trading back into the third round or fourth round or something like that, or the second round. They can package some of these picks up and move up there. But overall, with all these amount of picks, they definitely need it with the amount of free agents they're losing, and also with the cap space as well. And also, too, Buffalo is pretty notorious, and I'll give them credit for that, for Brandon B and Sean McDermott. They are really good at drafting players late in the draft and getting tons of production out of them. Notable ones are Matt Milano, 5th-round pick, Christian Benford, the top, plays phenomenal for right now at corner. He was a 6th, 7th-round pick, and so forth. Gabe Davis was I won't say a late pick, but a 4th-round pick. Again, solid starter. So they get tons of production out of the late draft picks. So notable positions, number 1 obviously is defensive line, 2nd is wide receiver, 3rd is safety, though I would prioritize wide receiver in the first round more in defensive line, but no doubt overall, because there's the lack of what we're losing, or the lack of players we have at the position and what we're losing, defensive lineman is key. And then from notable free agents that, on the cheap, they can get for wide receiver, Braxton Berrios. Not too crazy with the stats, only 27 catches, 228, 1 touchdown. But he does flash at times when I did see him play against us. Made some good catches. Only 1.7 projected. I think it's a very solid deal, at least for a slot receiver at that position, to kind of rotate out Khalil Shakir. And also too is Van Jefferson. Once again, you kind of have to go cheap. Maybe I'm kind of being a little too safe with the savings, and they can probably go a little bit higher. But as of right now, for Van Jefferson, got just a cheap deal, $2.3 million. Again, could they go over it? There's speculation of Marquise Brown, which I think is going to be a little too much, or other notable players. Another one's Curtis Samuel, which I was thinking of putting on here, but I'm worried about the injury concerns with him he's had in the past. So maybe I'm going a little too cheap with these low budget players, but I think those are very low risk, high reward players, especially for Braxton Berrios. I think both these guys can have decent seasons. Van Jefferson, $2.3 million. And also for the question marks, they didn't list what they had for their market. A notable player that everyone would know, Jerry Hughes, who was just with the team back in 2021, played the last 2 years in Houston and played well. Last year he did take a step back. His first year in Houston, he had 9 sacks, which is phenomenal, the most he had since 2018 when he had 7. This past season he had 3. So the age could be catching up to him at 35, but once again, we were just talking about names to just bodies to throw in there, cheap veterans. I think Jerry Hughes would have no problem coming back to Buffalo and being in the rotation. And for safety, we have too is Darnell Savage, who I saw a tweet him talking to Rasul Douglas, the chance that he might come here because of that. Again, for Packers players, some people say he just didn't live up to the expectation, so. I guess at that a decent safety at that, but I think for right now that's what we're just looking for. So Darnell Savage could be a pickup, or Tashawn Gibson, just from the Super Bowl team, the 49ers, fell short. Played well there too. That could be definitely a solid pickup, and up there in age as well. So that could be a good veteran presence alongside Poyer at that position. But with that, it's just just a quick layout with that. For the 2024 Bills offseason, it's going to be very difficult with $54.2 million on the dead cap, or not the dead cap, on the salary cap. Tons of restructuring for mostly these guys up here. So no doubt, the Bills are going to get under the cap just like anyone else. But the more important thing is, the more interesting thing I want to see is just what's going to happen in free agency. Who the Bills are going to retain, who they're going to bring back. And more importantly, just in free agency in general, who do they sign? Brandon Beane already came out and said that don't expect big names. So that's, a swing and a miss. That's really hindering us because of the Von Miller signing they had a couple years ago. But no, overall, it's going to be very interesting to see what they do. And more importantly, just in the draft, because whatever they do in free agency is really going to dictate, obviously, what they do in the first round. For me, it's a 50-50 shot with what they're going to do. I think it's a 50-50 chance to go wide receiver, defensive lineman, because of just the big need there. But I think they should prioritize wide receiver for Josh Allen and replace Gabe Davis and get him a playmaker on a cheap deal alongside Stephon Diggs, who doesn't have that many more years left on him. And there's of course that's a totally different story with him. With does he want out of Buffalo? For him, say fortunately or unfortunately, he's stuck for this year on the team because of the cap problems. Next year, I think they'll be able to move off of him. So I think they really need to prioritize that position because of potentially losing Diggs after the season. But we'll see where they go.